Late last week, we traveled to the border state of Arizona for the McCain Institute Sedona Forum, honoring the late senator who was known for his straight talk and ability to forge bipartisan compromise when the need arose. We spoke with the state's newly independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema. She left the Democratic Party last fall and is very much aligned with that maverick mindset.
We're in the midst of the hemisphere's worst refugee crisis.
That's right.
Partisanship is at such a high level. Is it simply a political reality that you can't get comprehensive reform done? You have to chip away at this piecemeal. What you introduced was a temporary 2-year authority to expel migrants, but with an exemption for asylum claims because of the immediate Title 42 expiration.
That's a Band-Aid. The Biden administration had 2 years to prepare for this and did not do so. And our state is going to bear the brunt. And migrants will be in crisis as soon as next week. It will be a humanitarian crisis because we are not prepared. So the legislation we introduced yesterday is about tiding this over, giving us some time and space for the Biden administration to do their job, and for us legislators to actually create a plan that can get through both the House and the Senate.
But the votes aren't there for this replacement, essentially, of Title 42, the 2-year ability to expel migrants without guaranteed asylum hearings.
We don't know that yet. We just introduced the bill yesterday.
Well, Republican Senator Lankford was out criticizing it, saying it doesn't solve the problem. And he has been a partner to you.
Yeah. No, but I don't think that's a criticism. He's right that it doesn't solve a problem.
You think you can get this passed before next week? Before May 11th?
Oh, God, no, Margaret. This is the United States Senate.
That's what I was saying.
I don't think we can get agreement on a restroom break by next Thursday. The United States Senate is functioning at a fairly dysfunctional level right now. And that's due to the partisanship that is driving both parties. As you and I both know, both parties have benefited for decades by not solving this challenge. They use it to bash each other in elections. And what bothers me about that, Margaret, is that, look, they don't live in a border state. So they don't know that the mayor of Gila Bend has to put migrants in his car and drive them to Phoenix because they are released in a town that has no bus stop. They don't know what it's like for migrants to sleep outside in the farms in Yuma because there is nowhere for them to go. This is a crisis for our border communities and for migrants. And so, unfortunately, the parties are thinking about this from a political perspective rather than a human perspective.
You said the administration failed to create a workable plan to process migrants after May 11th, Title 42. They would say they've got the troop deployment of 1,500s, processing centers, a phone app, expansion of legal migration, regulation that will bar migrants from asylum if they did not first seek asylum in a third country. Do you support any of what the administration has done?
Well, these steps, which all have been announced in the past week or so, are helpful. These are very helpful. Having 1,500 troops along the U.S.-Mexico border is helpful. It is a border of over 2,000 miles, though. So 1,500 troops isn't going to get the job done. That's just the reality. We also are very concerned that all of this is happening in the week or so before the rollout. Just today, I was on the phone with the sheriff of Cochise County. He has gotten no information from the Department of Homeland Security or the federal government about what the flow is going to look like, about what they can expect for processing in terms of how long it takes to process migrants. He's gotten no information, neither have I, about how many buses there will be available to transport migrants. Now, he's gotten the information he does have from me, because I call him every few days, but he's not gotten that information from the Department of Homeland Security. And Margaret, what's unfortunate is that I'm asking for that information and I'm not getting it. And so either the administration has that information and they're choosing not to share it, which is a problem since we're the ones who are going to deal with the crisis, or they don't have it. And that's even more concerning because how do you prepare for an inflow of migrants when you don't know what you're going to expect?
And that hasn't been shared with the governor?
It has not been shared with the governor. I spoke with the governor yesterday.
Wow. It
has not been shared. So we do not have this information. There are 3 nonprofit organizations in Arizona that provide incredible assistance to our border communities. One is in Yuma, one is in Tucson, one is in Phoenix. They don't have this information. And they're the ones who are responsible for accepting the migrants after they're released from custody. So while it's wonderful that the administration is announcing things like a 1,500 troop deployment and these new processing centers, which will not be operational by next Friday, those are good things. Those are aspirational. That's not the same as operational. Rent the buses, hire the drivers, build the soft-sided facilities so that we can process individuals. We need more holding capacity. I mean, let's be realistic here. And that's we're not prepared for that. And that's frustrating, Margaret. And the reason why it's frustrating is because I know that means that the sheriffs in our southern border are going to be bearing the brunt of it. And our men and women of Border Patrol will be working even longer shifts.
Have you talked to the White House directly about this?
Yes, I have.
What's the response?
It has not been adequate.
Do you care to elaborate?
I do not.
Because what you're laying out is a level of crisis concern. So
Yes, that's correct.
they return
That
your
is
calls?
what I have been doing. I've been raising the alarm because.
Do they return your calls
Oh, yes, yes.
and just not share information?
Just not, right, that's correct. This is a problem. We've had 2 years to prepare for this.
Do you think that's personal?
No, not at all. I don't think it's personal. I think that there's a system in Washington, D.C. that is deeply disconnected from the real lives and experiences of border communities and the migrants who seek to come to this country. But what I would like, Margaret, is for them to learn.
President Biden acknowledged you as the lead co-author of bipartisan infrastructure bill. He called you the most determined woman I know. Leader McConnell said, "You're the most effective first-term senator I've seen in my time in the Senate." What would you want to get done in a second term?
Immigration, it's been part of my life's work. Folks who've known me for a long time in Arizona know that I started my career as a social worker. And when I started my career as a social worker, I actually worked in an immigrant and refugee community. And that was many years ago. So it has been really important to me my entire life.
Are we that far off from it that we're looking past 2024?
No, I'd like to do it before then. Our state has suffered for the last 40 years because of the federal government's failure to do anything about it. And we're facing the worst crisis of my life right now with immigration. So I want to do it now.
We'll have more of our conversation with the senator in our next half hour, and we'll be back in 1 minute. Welcome back to Face the Nation. Here's more of our conversation with Senator Kyrsten Sinema in Sedona last week.
I want to ask you about a quote that stood out to me that was in a recent New York Times profile of you. It quotes you as saying, "One of the big problems in negotiations is that often some, not exclusively men, but often men, are so busy talking about what they need, they're not spending any time hearing what someone else needs. If you give them what they need, you can get what you want." So on May 9th, 5 men, including the President of the United States and 4 congressional leaders, are going to meet to discuss the standoff over the debt ceiling. You've been listening. What does a deal look like?
I've been disappointed with the conversations up to date. Both parties are talking without listening to each other. They're just talking right past each other, right? So President Biden says, "I want a clean debt limit to meet the full faith and responsibility of the United States of America." To be clear, he's correct. We must meet the full faith and credit responsibility for the United States of America. That is our duty. However, it's not correct to assume or to pretend that either party is used to or always is willing to pass a debt limit without conditions. Both parties have played this game for years. And so we're in a situation where one party is saying they will not negotiate at all with the other party. I think that's a very dangerous place to be because 1, it's not realistic. And 2, it's just not going to happen. So Kevin McCarthy, as we all saw, took him a long time to become speaker, barely squeaked by with the votes, had to make a lot of concessions to get the job. And he has a very, very, very narrow road to walk. So he has to thread a needle where he can get the votes he needs to pass a debt limit increase and continue to be speaker. Now, there have been sounds coming out from the Republican conference in the House for months. Patrick McHenry, who's the chair of the House Financial Services Committee, Patrick has been talking for months about what a deal could look like. People have not been listening. They should be. I think folks should actually say, let's hear these options. The reality is the bill that Kevin and his colleagues passed through the House is not going to be the solution.
Right.
The votes do not exist in the United States Senate to pass that. But what the president is offering is not a realistic solution either. There's not going to be just a simple clean debt limit. The votes don't exist for that. So the sooner these two guys get in the room and listen to what the other one needs, the more likely they are to solve this challenge and protect the full faith and credit of the United States of America. We're in really shaky ground right now.
And now we have June 1st as the X date, according to the
right.
Treasury Secretary.
That's right.
So do you think that gives enough time for a broad agreement? If there's been no talking to date, how do they get it done?
They could get it done.
By June 1st, well in advance, before an actual default.
They could get it done, but it would be a challenge. I think what it would require is both Speaker McCarthy and the president and their respective party machines to kind of drop the facade, like where they're at right now, and just sit down and talk about brass tacks. What does Kevin need in order to deliver the votes? And what does the president need in order to feel comfortable with the full faith and credit of the United States of America? Get to that point and then figure out a way to give each man what he needs.
Are you weighing in on this at all?
I have conversations with my colleagues every day.
That sounds like a yes. Well, back in 2011, it was a senator who helped deliver, coming back from the brink. The last time there was the risk of default when Leader McConnell jumped in. Right now, it doesn't look like he's jumping in.
I don't think he can.
Why?
Well, I don't think that a solution that was negotiated by Senator McConnell would carry the kind of weight that is needed with House Republican members.
So
I think Senator McConnell knows that.
Which is why he's saying talk to the House. Right. Well, they'll all be in the room on May 9th.
That's right.
So we'll see what happens.
Our full conversation with Senator Sinema is on our website and our YouTube channel.